Hey there, and welcome to this explainer. If you're stepping into a classroom or maybe a corporate training room for the very first time, or, even if you're just looking to completely revamp your approach to instruction, I am so incredibly glad you're here. For the next few minutes, I want you to think of me as your personal mentor. Together, we're going to navigate the frankly overwhelming complexity of teaching and training by digging into an absolute classic, real game changer of a framework. Look, I completely get the day-to-day grind. As a new educator or a fresh trainer, it literally can feel like you've been thrown right into a sea of educational terminology without a life jacket. When you're in the thick of it, just trying to keep your head above water, manage a room full of varying personalities, and somehow get through your material, well, the temptation is huge to just toss educational theory on the back burner and say, yeah, I'll worry about all that next year.
But I want to promise you something right off the bat. Understanding the cognitive hierarchy we are about to dive into, it isn't just extra baggage weighing you down. It is the life jacket. We're going to unpack Bloom's taxonomy today, and I swear, if you frame it as a highly practical tool rather than some rigid, boring rulebook, it is going to make your job so much easier and make your learners so much more successful.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Bloom's taxonomy was originally developed way back in 1956 and updated more recently. Benjamin Bloom essentially wanted to move education far, far beyond the old-school notion that learning is just simple memorization. So he mapped out 6 levels of thinking. It's honestly a lot like building a house. You start with the foundation, right? That's remembering the facts. Then understanding is knowing exactly why those building materials go together. Applying is actually picking up your tools to build. Analyzing is meticulously inspecting those walls for structural integrity. Evaluating is judging whether the whole house is up to code. And finally, creating is designing a brand new, completely innovative floor plan all by yourself.
So how do we make this immediately useful for you? Well, treat this hierarchy as your go-to interactive planning tool and template for modern assessments. You can literally map specific classroom or training tasks to the exact cognitive demand level you want, just by using precise, measurable action verbs. Like, want your students to simply remember? Ask them to list or define. Want them to jump up to evaluate? Ask them to assess or justify. Hitting the nail on the head with the right verb guarantees you are hitting the exact right level of thinking for your lesson. Let's picture what this actually looks like from the viewpoint of a student experiencing active learning. Let's say we're in history class. Simply recalling dates, that keeps them anchored at the basic remember level. But asking them to deconstruct the complex causes of a historical event, boom, that pushes them right up to analyze. Same thing in mathematics. Reciting a formula is basic recall, but translating that exact equation to build a functional computer spreadsheet, now they're brilliantly bridging understand and apply. You're actively stretching those cognitive muscles and shifting them from a passive receiver into a totally active participant. Now, what's really interesting here is a persistent and honestly quite damaging myth surrounding these levels. You'll constantly hear the bottom levels dismissed as lower order and the top praised as higher order thinking. People sometimes imply that memorization is just a total waste of time that dumbs down learning. But guess what? Bloom never actually used those terms in a disparaging way. In fact, he argued that complex, higher-level thinking is completely impossible without a rock-solid foundation of basic knowledge first. I mean, you simply can't analyze what you haven't remembered, right? And moving up a step to comprehension, or understanding, there's this big misconception that this just means rephrasing something in slightly different words. Actually, scratch that. It's so much richer than that. True comprehension is this incredibly active, rigorous process of sense-making. It demands deep judgment, close attention to the relationships between ideas, and real caution in interpretation. It is a highly active, deeply engaged state of mind. It's not just parroting back information. So, the crucial point is, well, here is where a lot of educators get really tripped up when we reach application. There's a super common assumption that application strictly requires physical, hands-on learning, like literally building a tangible model. But application is really about unprompted cognitive transfer. It means taking a purely abstract concept and applying it to a brand new problem entirely on your own. You don't have to physically build anything. For instance, applying the abstract laws of statistics to evaluate the reliability of a written test, that is a perfect textbook example of high-level application. Okay, so you're standing at the front of the room. How on earth do you manage all this complexity in real time? I absolutely love this approach from educator Mike Gershon. He suggests organizing your lesson activities into 3 distinct segments, based purely on cognitive demand. Start your first segment with remember and understand. Maybe get learners to summarize core concepts. Then, in segment 2, transition to apply and analyze. Have them experiment or compare some data. Finally, finish strong in segment 3 with evaluate and create, where they assess a complex problem and actually design a unique solution. It's just a brilliant, straightforward way to structure your time.
As a mentor, I really cannot stress this enough. Moving intentionally through these cognitive demands is how you genuinely support students who have incredibly diverse learning needs. By ensuring everyone starts with that strong foundation of knowledge before they progress up the hierarchy, you're allowing learners to master the basics at their own individual pace. Moving deliberately through these levels doesn't just help them pass a test tomorrow, it helps your pupils build lifelong, resilient study habits.
But hey, let's pivot for a second, because this framework isn't just for K-12 schools. It is an absolute powerhouse for corporate training too. If you're in the corporate environment, you can combine Bloom's action verbs with what's called the ABCD model to craft incredibly precise learning outcomes. ABCD stands for audience, behavior, condition, and degree. This simple, elegant formula ensures your training objectives are specific, highly measurable, and align perfectly with your company's broader strategic goals. Let's look at how this sounds in practice. At the end of the training, okay, that's our audience. Trainees should be able to develop a comprehensive project plan, that's our behavior, and notice it's utilizing that high-level create verb from Bloom's, using project management software, there's the condition, with at least 90% accuracy, and that's the degree. See how crisp that is? There's literally zero ambiguity about what success looks like here.
When you actually apply this in a corporate environment, the shift is totally palpable. You directly improve employee engagement and drive real, tangible skill mastery. By taking your team step by step through the hierarchy, starting from simply understanding basic company policies, all the way up to evaluating workflows and creating brand new solutions, you turn passive meeting attendees into active, highly engaged masters of their craft. It's a total game changer.
Zooming out to look at modern education as a whole, critics rightly point out that learning isn't always this rigid, linear climb up a traditional pyramid. And they're totally right. Contemporary educational frameworks recognize that learning is messy, it's complex, it's deeply interconnected, and it is heavily influenced by a learner's social and cultural environment. Thankfully, Bloom's flexible enough to adapt. It's meant to be a compass to guide you, not a one-way street you're trapped on.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why we can so easily supercharge Bloom's taxonomy with modern technology. Think about digital tools like sophisticated spreadsheet algorithms or social learning platforms that utilize peer assessment. These inherently push learners right up into those analyze, evaluate, and create levels. Technology, when you intentionally map it to these cognitive demands, becomes the ultimate catalyst for collaboration and higher-level thinking.
So, I want to leave you with this provocation. Think about your very next lesson plan or training module. Where are your learners currently spending most of their time? And more importantly, how will you deliberately push them beyond that basic recall up through the cognitive hierarchy to create a truly rigorous, engaging, and transformative experience? Grab that life jacket, use those action verbs we talked about, and go empower your learners. You've totally got this.